on Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, I want to show you a preset that I built around some of the Marshall JVM models in the Axe FX 3. I was recently able to borrow a real JVM head and the Joe Satriani signature JVM head, both of which are modeled in the Axe FX 3. Had a lot of fun with the real amps. Having the real amps kind of helped me figure out how I like to dial them in, and I found that those settings translate pretty much perfectly into the Axe FX. So to get started, I'm on the Axe FX 3. I've got this late 70s Les Paul Artist, which has some PAF style clones in it going straight into the Axe 3. You're hearing the unprocessed raw audio. There are quite a few different JVM models in here because the real amps not only have 4 channels, they have 3 modes on each channel. So if you go to the kind of amp type selector, you can see down here, we've got Brit JVM OD1 green, orange and red, and the same for the OD2 channel. Furthermore, the Joe Satriani model is modeled as well over here as JS410. We've got crunch orange and red, and then lead orange and red on there as well. What I want to do is just let you hear the difference between green, orange, and red in terms of kind of gain levels and voicing on the OD1 mode. The OD1 mode is my favorite mode on the real amp. This toggle switch is upside down as well, so I am on the bridge pickup. I'll let you hear OD1 green, then orange, then red with the exact same settings on each of them. So the green mode is probably the closest to what we would expect for a classic Marshall rock tone, but if I compare that to, say, the Brit 800 at the same settings, the Brit 800 has a lot less gain than even the green mode at the same settings. So it's definitely voiced a lot more like a modern high gain amp than the kind of lower gain traditional Marshall classic crunch. That is just OD1 on the regular JVM as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep those settings the same. I like the orange mode pretty much across everything on the real amp. So that's what I've done here. I'll let you hear the OD1 orange the way I've set it up. You can see that from the stock settings, I have brought the master volume on the main JVM down to 2. The JS models actually default to have the master at 2, which is around where I personally think it sounds best. As with all of this, experiment with it and find that sweet spot with your rig. But basically, just like the real amp, I like to bring the bass and treble up a bit, pull a bit of mid-range out, keep the gain, say, below 4 on each mode, and you're probably going to have a pretty good time. Straight out of the gate, it basically just sounds like a boosted Marshall. If I go to scene 2, I'm on channel B of the amp and I've got OD2 orange. OD2 is a lot more, say, aggressive sounding, more scooped. There's more gain on tap, and I've got the gain higher. This one's like your immediate lead sound or metal rhythm tone. Sounds even more aggressive if you add a preamp boost. Let's try straight up 808 just with the stock boost settings. Let's hear that. And with the grinder boost, it's insane. Let's go to scene 3 here, because now I'm using the JS 410 Crunch Orange on the regular JVM. The second channel is labeled Crunch, but it sounds significantly different to the Joe Satriani version. The Satch version kind of sounds a little bit more like, say, the Brit 800 model in here. So again, pretty much the same settings except for the presence and depth, which I've just turned up to noon. The master volume on the JS 410 models defaults to 2, which is, in my opinion, pretty much the sweet spot on the real amp as well. This one is more of a classic rock. It is smoother and a little darker sounding than, say, the Brit 800 model, which I think a lot of people will like. You can, of course, play around with boosting the mid-range right up on this, turning the bass down, going for more of like a, I guess, a kind of classic plexi style thing. It's a great all-around rock and roll amp mode. The last scene on here, scene 4, is going to use the orange lead mode of the JS model, and I'm going to pair it together with the Aurora delay pretty much at stock settings on here. Again, I've just used the same settings across all of the amps. You can experiment with these, and if you're just going to use a single amp model, of course, dial it in to taste and dial it in so that it works best with your particular guitar, your hands, and the rest of your rig. This one has a glorious amount of gain, and even with the mids below noon, the mid-range is quite pushed and quite smooth and vocal. In my opinion, the JS model is much more voiced for kind of lead guitar playing. Think of Joe Satriani. You know, Joe is the lead player in the band. There's no singer. The lead guitar kind of takes the lead role, and it fills up a lot of that glorious mid-range space. In my opinion, this one is even better with a wah in front as well. So let's drop a wah block on here. We will attach the control parameter to the relevant jack on your FC controller or MIDI controller. I'm using FC1 pedal number 1 over here. I like to set up auto engage on here so that it's set up for pretty much a medium speed. And then I set the off value to 95% because I'm used to crybaby style wah pedals where when you are all the way forward, the wah is off. So we'll set that up and then try this with whatever wah type you're using. Just bring the maximum frequency down to around 1500, 1600 hertz, and it will fatten everything up considerably. Let's hear this now. In summary, the orange mode is my favorite mode on all of these, but you do have the lower gain green option and the higher gain red option on the standard JVM models. I think if you're going for a big creamy lead sound, the JS 410 lead is a great amp model to try out. The crunch mode on there is a great alternative to something like the Brit 800 or the Cameron models. If you like high gain, then OD1 orange or red or OD2 orange or red on the standard JVM is absolutely going to tickle you pink. You can boost it and go to the stratosphere. These have more in common with, say, like a 5150 or a Soldano than a classic Marshall tone. But that's kind of the point. If you want a classic Marshall tone in the Axe FX, there are loads of classic Marshalls already in there. Don't neglect the JVM. I will put this preset up on AxeChange. Just keep in mind, you will need firmware 22 beta in order to try it out. If you don't like trying those, just wait until the full release comes out. If you're really impatient and you want to try them, well, you can see the settings on there for the amps. Try those as a starting point and dial it into taste. Otherwise, have a great week. I'll see you all next Tuesday for another Tuesday Tone Tip.